Welcome to Fearless and Flawed. Today, we're joined by Barbara Burgess, the founder of Corluma, a transformational guide for high achieving women who are ready to step beyond the surface and enter their deeper truth. After years of outward success in the corporate world, Barbara followed an inner calling that led her to blend soul work, strategy, and intuitive insight. In this conversation, we explore what real transformation looks like when we stop trying to fix ourselves and start remembering who we truly are.
And I'm Serena, and I help bold leaders become the go to experts in their space.
And I'm Sarah, an email marketing pro here to convert clicks into cash. Together, we are two women in charge, digging into the fearless, the flawed, and the oh so fabulous journeys of female founders rewriting the rules.
So let's dive in. Welcome to our show, Barbara.
Thank you. So good to be here. As you both know, I've been looking forward to it.
Your journey from a high level executive to a transformational guide is incredibly inspiring. What was the pivotal moment that made you shift in that direction?
I think the big moment was sort of an experience I had at a coffee shop. And that was, literally sitting in a space reflecting on my upcoming year and looking like tangibly at the calendar and, looking ahead to see what was going to happen. And I saw a training that I had done year after year after year on my calendar, and I experienced a full body no. Like every part of me, my head, myself was like, we're not doing it. We're absolutely not doing it. And, I am skeptical even with myself. So I was skeptical with myself and was like, what do you mean? And I had been with this company for over 20 years. So this was not a light thought that I had at that moment. And it was like, nope, done, 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 done. And so I literally sat and discussed with myself and reasoned with myself, like, but what, why? Right. And I ended up having things falling into three buckets. And one was, it's just time for something new. Like, what were you thinking doing anything for 2 decades? Like, you're a dynamic creature. That's enough. 2 was being a later in life mom and wanting to be around to catch things in the cracks for my teenagers because they don't care about your time or timeline. It's like whenever they feel like sharing. But the third was also I had done a lot to try to make things better where I was. And, my metaphor is like I was hitting my head against the brick wall for the third time, expecting it to move. And so you finally have that moment like, oh, that's not going anywhere. And it was a combination of those three things that I was like, all right, I guess I got to do this. So I literally came home and I told my husband, and again, imagine 2 decades and married to an engineer. I was like, hey, I got to quit my job. And he just sort of looked at me and was like, all righty then. And that began a whole new journey.
Dinner must have been real weird that night. Yeah,
It was. There were conversations that followed. I give him credit, having an engineering mind, the fact that he let it digest and didn't have something like, "What were you thinking?" or "What?" or no, he just, I watched the wheels turn and then, he made the call. So I give him creds for that one.
So, what were you doing before?
Yeah, I was a COO of a company that did leadership training and development, and we had a graduate university, we had a nonprofit, we had all these different things. And so, a pretty sort of mission-based company. And, I had worked my way into that position, and I had been named from a, board member perspective that I would be the inherent CEO, like that was the next thing. But, working with the leaders that I was working with at the time, like, I realized, like, the things are still gonna be problematic. Even if I'm in charge, my CEO probably would have moved to the board, and so really it wouldn't have been mine. And so, although it kept me stimulated for many years because we didn't start out with all these different areas, I had joked to a boss at one point in time. I said, listen, am I an idiot that I've been here this long? But we're like, no, because it's been a startup every 3 years. Like, oh, we're gonna move into this area. Now we're gonna have a graduate. Now we're gonna do a nonprofit. Now, all that kind of stuff. So that kept it interesting. But yeah, so I was COO, probably would have moved into CEO in the next couple of years, and yeah, it was time to go.
But you had that soul crushing moment when you realized that, nope, I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and I think really, being willing to listen to that, like, I think we always have these kind of internal conversations that could guide us elsewhere, but it's so easy to rationalize our way out of it rather than listen to ourselves. And I think there are, these few turning point moments you have in your life where, like, literally I had the insight on Sunday, came home and told my husband and gave notice on Tuesday. Like, that is not always what happens, right? And so the listening to me was almost the bigger uh, trajectory shift.
Is it once you like kind of said it out loud, that was it? There was no going back?
It was. And again, I think once I said it out loud and argued with myself, right? Once I had actually made a case for the reason of it, and by the way, it was terrifying, right? Like, you put that much into a place and, like, who am I? What am I going to do? Will I add value somewhere else? Da 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 da. Like, all the self-doubts are right there, So, and I gave a really long notice. So I was there for 6 months transitioning my job, making sure everybody had everything they needed, as I was wont to do, which was an error in retrospect. That was a big mistake. That was an overgiving, but I didn't know at the time. And, so I was making sure everything stood up. So it was still like I was a month into giving notice where I was like, I wonder what I'm going to be doing. It's not like I had the plan first. It kind of emerged over time.
I love that. That's such a power move.
Well, and we have to celebrate the ones we have, because I have plenty of moves that have been cowardly over my career. Okay.
It's always balance. But it sounds like, I really appreciate your perspective now, kind of reflecting on it. But in that moment, if I'm on the peripheral looking at what you just told me, your 20-year career, your resume, you would appear to be someone who had it all. A supportive husband. You come home and you say he didn't dismiss me, a thriving career. But it wasn't enough.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think obviously we'll lean into this. There's two kinds of enough, right? There is the not enough in the sense of, like, if I have one more achievement, do one more thing, add one more thing to my resume, there's that moment in time, right? But then there's just that sense of rightness that is much more bodily experienced, in my, opinion, where it's like, is there something else that is calling to me at this moment in time? Is there somewhere else I should be, is whatever, but I'm just too afraid to make the move because the framework that I've been living into might fall down, right? Is this going to be a problem if I shift? And, I think that was the piece that was scarier, right? Is you live into certain ruts and routines over time, and, what is it if I change the whole thing? But the enough of listening to myself was more compelling. It's like that voice was louder at that moment in time than the one who thought I should build a resume, and I think that just becomes uninteresting at some point in time. Like, okay, good. Now I can do that. Great. And I have the house, I have the kids, I have the husband, I have the thing. What am I doing? Like, what brings me joy? How am I spending my life force, right? And I think it's really easy to get in the assumptions that the world tries to tell us that that next thing will do it, right? That's just consumption mindset, right? But I was as sucked in as anybody, I think.
Yeah. And you knew enough to know to get out of it and to listen, which I think is a lot of our listeners. We know we want balance. We say we want balance, right? We say we want to have it all, but is there a bit of a fallacy to that, right? Having it all in one world means having to sacrifice in others. And it seems like you came to this point, you shifted, and tell us, how was the journey of the shift? Because it can't be as easy as waving a magical wand and then everything just falls together.
Yeah, well, in some certain things it was. That vote that I gave myself to trust my choice was huge. I think that gave me a certain level of audacity that I hadn't felt in a long time. Like, oh my God, did I just say that out loud? Did that just happen, right? So I think that was very confidence building in some ways. And the safety part of me just got to the business of detailing my job and trying to figure out how to hand it off, right? That's a comfort level of, like, oh, I'll just keep myself busy with all the tasks, right? So those pieces made a lot of sense, but the space of the holy cow, what next was, I feel like, a dynamic back and forth between terror and joy. Like, there were certain things that I realized, like, I had spent a lot of my evenings and weekends doing work for the company. I was like, oh, I don't have to do that. Like there was just this whole freedom, right? That came with like, I could do anything. I remember making this list of all the things I could do that would earn money. And it wasn't that I was going to go do them, but it was just this exercise in that choice and possibility, right? Like I mean, anything, just anything could pay the bills. And so like, if the slate is clean, what's available? If other people's opinions are not the main driver, what's available, right? And I think I might have shared this with you guys before, but like I do this, exercise where I fast forward to end of days and, kind of run myself through what will have mattered at the end. I used to be a hospice volunteer. And so that it kind of forces you to look at life as a finite thing. It is not endless. And given that, if I were to fast forward to the end of days, will I be like, good job, I stayed 5 more years and got that title and delivered 20 more programs? Like, no, I will regret the fact that I didn't try other stuff, even if I failed, right? And so I think there was a lot of freedom coming from that, experience to make the leap.
So what did you do next? So it sounds to me as though you clung on a little bit to your safety net.
Thank you. Thank you. I will accept that, Serena. Yes, I did. I dysfunctionally clung on for too long. But what happened in the midst of that was I was talking to people and I was open, right? And so I had several people say, why don't you just start your own thing? And I had ruled it out initially, because I was like, I'm not that person. And that person was a ridiculously gender biased 1950s version of what an entrepreneur looks like. Like, oh, well, I'm not enough of a risk taker. I'm not, I don't lead things this way. I'm not the person that's super extroverted in all the spaces. I'm not like, I had all the reasons I didn't fit this really outdated stereotypical profile. And so I had originally kind of dismissed that, but it was like this little baby seed that got planted. It started growing and I was like, ooh, so many delightful things. Like I'm the only approver of anything I do. Wow, that would be amazing. I get to, like, I think it did shift from I have to I get to, was the joy of the entrepreneur's journey, right? And so somewhere in that 6-month transition, it just became the thing. And then I just started talking about it like it was true. Like people would ask me, well, what are you going to do? I said, I'm starting my own business. And like that started popping out of my mouth, which gave it a certain reality. And then I got to distract myself with some of the setting up things, getting a QuickBooks account, getting whatever the things are, right? And again, having been in the role of COO, I had overseen our financials. I'd done a lot of that stuff. So those pieces some of those were easier to do. It was more getting over the fact of what does an entrepreneur look like and could I possibly?
So many of the women that we've had on here have accidentally fallen into entrepreneurship. I remember my daughter once saying to me, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I was like, oh yeah, what you mean like mum? And she's like, no, a real one. I don't know. I still don't know what she meant by that, but
You're probably better not asking, right? Some things we don't want to know the answer to. Yeah.
so we obviously have some kind of preconceived idea of what an entrepreneur is in our heads, and maybe we don't fit it. And that's okay.
And to that point, like I had spent years supporting and co-leading women's leadership and development training. So I live in the combating the stereotype. I consult in those things. And so to recognize like there literally was this stereotype existing in my unconscious mind was news to me. It was like, oh, who are you and what are you doing there? I didn't realize you existed, right? And I think that's part of the extreme joy of being an entrepreneur from the other perspective is, gosh, you get to meet so many people doing it with their own fingerprint that vary so widely. And that's the joy of it, right? I don't have to do it how anybody, I mean, even getting business, it was like, yeah, no, I'm not going to, I know a whole system of sales I could teach someone. I taught it for a decade. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want to use that. I don't think so. I think I'm going to go out and have fun and meet people and talk about stuff and, follow my heart and my soul and see where it leads me. And I think that might work. And I've never been able to test it out.
That is like the epiphany of like, okay, I know imposter syndrome at to some degree, even if we actively work against it, even if we empower others, we feel it at some point. And so you work through it, or and again, not to say it doesn't exist, it creeps up, but you worked alongside it, if nothing else. And Corluma comes up. Corluma is your consulting agency. You help executives and companies really shine a light on the essence of a challenge or an opportunity. So again, sounds very type A driven.
Little guilty there.
But again, I think for the true type A women out there, and we very much identify, listen, you're probably not going to spend the rest of your days at home baking sourdough bread. That would be great. That no shade to that. But you are a woman who likes a certain being on the go, moving and grooving. And so you create this company. And yes, it's your own footprint. Yes, you are at the head of the table, if you will. But is it bringing you, first of all, tell us about the company. But then, like, does it bring you what you thought it would? Is it giving you that, yes, this is me? Or are you like, shit, I'm back in the trap?
I think it is, but I'll tell you, it's because of how I defined it, right? So the name itself is I couldn't find. I had plenty of ideas for names, and they were all taken. I was like, okay, there's no website URL I can get with that. But so I ended up with this combination. But core really being from the root of the word, heart, and luma being light. And so really, to me, I was like, that is more what I care about and who I am. And so my drivenness comes more out of like, I'm driven to care. I'm driven to show up and be present. I'm driven, to kind of lean into more of the being than the doing, ironically, for what I do. But when I set it up, my intent was, and I think this is where it's continued to be there, is it's an umbrella for whatever the F I want to do. That was the intent. And so the part of picking the name was so that anything could live under there, right? So although the reason I did executive coaching and consulting and training, and I'm doing some teaching and all that kind of stuff, is because it was low-hanging logical fruit. I've done these things, I was co-led our consulting business at our company. And so like I know how to do those things. So it's just like it was an easy thing to lean into. But I feel like it is a dynamic entity that gets to keep shifting as I get to keep shifting, right? So, did I know when I set that up that I would go write a book? Did I know that I was going to go do this one woman show? Did I know any of those things? No. But the beauty of the name itself was like, it can be anything, right? And so for me, that's the joy of it, in the sense that I will tell you right now that if we talk in another year, however I describe it is probably going to be different. I can almost feel the invitation tugging at me that it's time for another shift. I just am not totally sure what it looks like yet. And the part of the joy of doing it my own way is I don't have to know. I just get to lean into new stuff, and then it gets to live under this thing, right? So I just literally said this to somebody the other day because I do a lot of executive coaching, and they were like, they said something like, "Oh, did you always know you want to be an executive coach?" I'm like, "No, quite the opposite. I had zero desire to be an executive coach. And actually, at my company, I resisted doing it because what a stupid, boring job." I mean, literally at some level. Now, what I have discovered is that really that's in itself its own moniker. What I get to do is meet cool people. I get to really meet cool people, and I get to contribute to them in any way that I can. So like, I don't care if we call it this. That's a fine, appropriate businessy name, but it could be through 1,000 different venues, right? Like the more that I'm in the business, the more I understand what the business is me getting to help somebody. And the more that I stretch into my own discomfort, it's me getting to help somebody in ways that don't fit molds and aren't stereotypical. Like even the coaching process I follow isn't exactly like what I was trained in. And I tell people that, like, they'll do chem check calls with me, and I'm like, "Hey, this is how I roll. So like if that's a fit for you, great. And if it's not, you probably don't want to pick me." Like, don't pick me if you want that other thing, because I'm not going to do that thing. Like, life's too short, and I would be terribly bored doing that. So, I mean, I think to your question, because it doesn't have, it just has a now definition, the company. It doesn't have a permanent definition. So I feel pretty free, you know?
I love that. I think Serena and I talk a lot about, Serena, in your experience, you've talked a lot about you are this, you are more than a graphic designer. You are more than just painting pretty pictures. And you got to a point, I remember a very profound conversation where if you just want the person who is going to paint the pretty picture for the lowest price, don't pick Serena. So she's going to give you strategy. She's going to give you comprehensive marketing alongside her creative, brain. So there's power in saying, don't pick me
Yes.
if if this is not a right fit versus, okay, I'll give you a coupon, pick me.
Well, and I think those definitions even are so historically outdated, right? Like, I do think we get to be, a modern version of Renaissance women. And I think all these titles and things feel to me like straitjackets, right? So, I joked with both of you before we got on that I went and, stalked you more online after I'd met you. And to me, the fun part, not just about sharing services, but about purchasing them is I also don't have to live in those definitions of purchasing them. Like, I can tell that Serena just makes magic in different areas. So, like, we can call it some fancy business names because that's what people buy and they might Google for SEO, but that's not really it, right? Sarah, you're like the world is your playground, and like, oh yeah, I'm doing this now, but then I'm doing this now, and then whatever, and any way that I could, drive and contribute. Like, it's just that our structures are a little limited, right? Our ways we describe things. The fact that we feel like we have to say something rational to somebody when they ask us, well, what do you do? Right? Well, I don't know. I do a lot of stuff. I care about people. I like to eat good food. I, try to probably pretty ineffectively raise children. I try to contribute to humanity through this businessy thing. I also get disgusted by it and, rail at it. There's a lot of things I do, right? But, there's certain things that people pay me money for. And, those change over time as well. And I think, again, the freedom of the business is we get to do it our own way. And I think there's a next level of evolution of female entrepreneur that will shed a lot more of the titles. I think what we've seen over time with social media is like you see the comma, 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 comma. Oh, I'm a creator, I'm an artist, I'm a this, I'm a that, I'm a that. I think that's going to continue to evolve. And I think the younger women are doing a beautiful job in entrepreneurial circles of like, forget the titles. I do a lot of stuff. You identify however you want to identify, which is great.
See, personally, being a Brit, we would hear Americans describe what they do, and it would be very long and convoluted and sound super, super impressive. I remember hearing somebody describe what they did once, and I had to translate it in my head. Basically, they were unemployed, but it sounded as though they had a really highly impressive position.
Yes. Yes. Yes.
I think, I mean, I'm really jealous of that because my natural instinct when somebody says to me, "So, what do you do?" I go, "Oh, I'm a graphic designer. I draw pretty pictures for a living." I haven't done that for years, but it's my safe zone, so I stay there. So, and yeah, so I think that's a very British thing as well, is not just a female thing. So the combination is horrendous, but
Well, and I think, to me, what's interesting is like the authenticity piece, right? That's even a buzzword, but like, who are you really? Who are you when everything's a mess and the world is falling apart? Who are you? Like, who do you call? What's it look like? How do you, like those things to me are interesting about humanity way more than a lot of the other things we ask questions about. And I think, the authenticity, it probably is neither in the Brit version or the American version, neither nor, because, you know, again, to your point, like a lot of what I do in consulting is like I'm translating really complex stuff into normal people speak. And I also say, like, if you can't say it at a sixth grade teaching level, you don't know. Stop gaming. You have no idea, right? And part of the thing is like, you get to be dumb and say, okay, take me back again. What does that really mean? So like when you go to the office, what do your fingers do? Who do you talk to? Blah, 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 blah. Like that's what you get to do.
Sounds just like marketing.
Yeah. Yeah. Do we get to be audacious enough to say, there's a lot of things I do for money. I don't know. Do you really want to hear? I mean, and I think a lot of times what we're really trying to say when we're at those things is like, hi, human, I'm another human. Like, I'd like to know you and maybe I'll like you and maybe you'll like me. I mean, that's really what's going on, right? With all this title exchange and stuff that way. But, to me, the business moniker, the logo is an umbrella for a playground. And that's how I intend to use it. And we'll see how it goes. I don't know.
Well, it sounds like under that umbrella, you've added author because you have written enough, which is enough is a heartfelt manifesto for anyone caught in the trap of not enough. So I know we're trying to deviate away from titles, but new author. Hello, Barbara B. I'm going to be best-selling author. I'm just going to put it out there because we're not waiting for things to happen. They've already happened. And so how did you get there?
As I was having the break, right, the cracks in the sidewalk of quitting my job, literally there was more time and space to like experience all the other things, right, that aren't the busyness and the distractions. And so I was having these really beautiful experiences and moments with people and with, opportunities and things like that. And I just started grabbing them and jotting them down originally with no intent other than savoring, right? Like, oh my gosh, this just happened. This just happened. This just happened. And, it was probably, partway through that all of a sudden it was like, oh, I think I'm supposed to write this thing, and it was that same kind of voice that told me to leave, is the same kind of voice that was, kind of saying, just do this thing. Right. There was one moment, which is the story I tell at the very beginning of the book, that was the moment that started that whole thing, which was me taking some old sidewalk chalk we had and an old container and putting it out on my sidewalk. I'm in Chicago, and just saying, please write, chalk, or draw. And I drew a couple of colorful circles, and it was really like I was cleaning out clutter at some level, but I thought, oh, that'll be fun. My kids are older, so they weren't going to use it, right? And it turned into like a profound experience that still is happening to this day, literally as of this morning, which I have a quick snip on. But I was sitting up on my porch. People couldn't see me, but there was a little boy that came by tugging on his parents', shirt, asking to draw. And I could hear this, but they couldn't see me. So it was like the most beautiful sacred space of overhearing intimacy. And I hear him, chalking, drawing, like sweetly, like, oh, little blue, oh, little pink, this just beautiful, like music. And, I just thought it was sweet. And then I wanted to respect their space. And I waited until I couldn't hear them talking anymore and I didn't hear anything else. And I thought, all right, I'm going to pop down and see. And I just assumed as a parent, like, I'm sure this is a scribble that is supposed to be a cat or whatever they, kids do. And I looked down and I literally physically felt stopped in my tracks. I totally teared up. I tear up thinking about it again because this kid had taken these colorful circles I made and put rings around them and made this whole thing into space. It was like there were gorgeous multicolored planets on my sidewalk from this thing that was so, oh, I'm just going to get rid of chalk in my thing. And I was so moved by that in the sense of this is not a thing that cost money. This was not a thing that, it was just this profound, and it was where I first felt in that journey the sense of enough. It was literally like I had this felt sense inside my body that someone was like hugging me. And it was just, I was so moved. And so that started this whole experience that I think like kind of cracked my heart open to these little micro moments. And literally this still goes on to this day. I this morning, I was having a tough time last night and I'm going to cry thinking about it. I walked out this morning and somebody had written on there, like people write big hearts, I love you, all kinds of stuff. but I was, again, having a moment. I walked outside, and right there, somebody had written, "You're doing great. Keep going." And I was like, you know, I texted it to my husband because he knew I was having a moment, and I said, "I guess the, sidewalk chalk oracle has spoken because it's what I needed, right?" But the fact that that gift from 3 years ago keeps on giving is amazing to me, and it's where it is a sense of enough. It's like for all of our divisiveness, for all of our scramble, for all of the self-importance, like that small act that that boy did changed the trajectory of my days in a significant way. And then I couldn't unsee all these other experiences I started having, so I wrote about them.
That's incredible. I'm gonna go and buy some chalk. Then I'm gonna go and see what my neighbors think.
There you go. There you go. Yeah. I mean, I've had people stop me in the front of the house that because some of them, like some people are artists, like they, and we're in a walkable neighborhood, and I've had people stop me and they said, "Oh, I'm your nighttime artist. I'm the one that draws the cartoons," because I know exactly who they are, and I've had people come and literally they'll donate chalk, put it out there. Somebody replaced the jar they had cracked. I mean, it is like a community thing now.
I I'm totally in awe. I want that outside my house. I can't imagine it around here,
Yeah.
but that sounds incredible.
Yeah. I will send pictures because you would just be floored. It's just, and I said in the book, but it's when we realized we were just talking about titles, but I was meeting people not through their titles, but through these pictures on their hearts. Truly, like whether it was somebody expressing love or somebody graduating or whatever it was, like we were meeting each other. In fact, there was one character named Max who would always sign everything, from Max, da 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 da. And at the time I published the book, I hadn't met Max yet. And I pictured in my mind it was like a 7-year-old boy. And at some point, a woman comes by. We were having, I don't know, it's a yard sale or something, and comes by and says, "Oh, yeah, blah, 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 about Max." And I'm like, "Wait a minute, Max is yours?" Da, da, da. And I thought she was the mom. Come to find out, Max is a dog. I mean, literally, she was signing for the dog. And I was like, "Oh my God, that's hilarious." But, Max and I had a little love affair back and forth because I would write, "Hi, Max. Good morning, Max." So, yeah, but that experience led to many experiences, which led to many more lessons and insights that, I say when I published the book, I believe it really started its deeper teaching of me. If somebody else reads it, I find that lovely, but I think it was meant for me to know that I'm enough, that what I have is enough, that everything is. And from that space, it's like there's so much more permission to play and do stuff and try stuff and be stuff, as an entrepreneur than I would have ever had without that sense.
I think that little pot of chalk turned into a whole community starter. Sounds incredible.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, not planned, and again, you look at, did this cost any money? No, this stuff was already sitting in my house. And I mean, that's my belief at some level. Like, if we could let down a lot of that artifice and we could all just engage with each other, there's so much to give and receive that isn't in the framework that we've set up in the world. It just isn't.
I don't know if the question we usually ask questions to our guests at this point. I feel like I already know Barbara's answer to the question, Serena. Barbara does not know the question, but I feel like, oh, what a bad question to ask her because she's so in her truth. Let's ask her anyways. Barbara, this is from a previous guest.
Mhm.
What is the number that would allow you to burn down your business? And would you? I feel like I already know the answer, but I don't know.
I feel like we should ask you first what my answer is.
Oh, well, I'll tell you what I think it is. I think so much of what you have represented and you've learned in your journey is there's more than, yes, a paycheck is essential, but it's not everything. Yes, I do things for money, but it's not me. So I don't know. I don't know if there's a number, but then you're also very rational and logical. So maybe it's 20 mil, call it a day.
Well, I'll give you two answers to that question because when it comes to actually burning down the business, I don't need to. It's an umbrella of a playground, so it's okay. It doesn't have to be anything, so there's no, restriction. But I have played the lottery, and I have, amounts of money in my mind that are more in the like 50 million range. And I've got plans, okay? I have spreadsheets that I've even put together. It's the good I want to do in the world. And I will tell you exactly what I would do if loads of money came my way, which I welcome. Thank you so much. I want to literally continue to empower people, but in a more financial way, to have that leg up, to do the crazy thing, to do the wild thing, particularly underserved populations. People don't have access. That's what I would do with that money. Like, I mean, what am I going to do? Buy like, another house? Like, yes, I'd refinish my couches. They have some stains. But beyond that, like, I really want to use it for good in the world. I find it reprehensible that there are people who have more money than they could ever, 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 ever use. And there's so many problems that are totally solvable, like not hard, right? Like, and so like I don't actually understand why we have world hunger. I think it's a mythology. Like we could solve it right now. If all the excess went to the people that needed it, I bet with the greatest minds we could map that and do it now. Like these are not, so why? And I think that's just my little girl naive, like, why can't we all get along? Why are we killing each other? I don't understand. It doesn't make any sense to me. And so, yes, I definitely have dollar amounts that I would do other wildly outrageous things for, but it was mostly to be empowering of folks to, really get access to the wild opportunities. I know plenty of, and I'm going to say it, guys who got funded in their businesses and then get all this credit later. Oh, you sold it for this huge multiple and that was amazing and da da da. I'm like, yeah, but look at all the cash that went in. Like, you give any one of my girlfriends that many millions? Are you kidding me? She'd be embarrassed if she didn't do that or more. Like, really? So, anyways, to say like that's what I would do with it.
So 50 million's the answer.
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. You got to pay taxes and all that kind of stuff. And then we want it leverageable enough. So,
But I love that answer because what you basically said was it was twofold. You let us know a number, but then you also let us know what you would do with it, which is so very much par for your, I think, your purpose, what your
yeah.
soul is aligned with, which I just absolutely love. And what would you ask the next guest? You have no idea who they are. You have no idea what industry they're in. What's your question for them? It can be simple, it can be deep.
Yeah, no, I think again, even back to this question of how I like to know about people, I think I would want to know what do they do when they feel raw and vulnerable?
Ooh.
I think there's just so many things we can learn about a human out of that.
Yeah, I just felt very raw and vulnerable when you asked that. I was just like, "Oh God, raw and vulnerable. Get me a Ben& and Jerry's. I need to cry. Why? I don't know. Let me journal."
And it could be that, right? It could be that. It could be, phone a friend. It could be, I don't know. I just think it'd be interesting.
Huh. I love that question, and I'll tell you why I really like it. I think 2 words, raw and vulnerable, just initially evoke an emotion,
Mm.
just evoke something. Like the minute you said that, I was like, "Oh God, am I naked? This is weird." Yeah.
It's very exposed. You're right. It's exposing. It's exposing and just thinking about it because it's kind of that.
Yeah. She didn't say anything crazy. She just asked, "What do you do?" And I'm like, "Don't go there, Barbara. This is a PG-13 podcast."
I think about this though with what both of you do, for money. I'll say that because you do a lot of things, I'm sure. But to me, the brands that I love, the people that I love to put my money to buy their goods and their services and all that kind of stuff are the ones that are so themselves, right? And I think that's part of in an authentic way, whether it's, trying to get clicks on something or to create something that's beautiful that reflects somebody, the ones that interest me are the ones that are really real. And I think that vulnerability is part of it, right? Like, again, I think part of this is in my early career, I was in marketing. Like, I could pitch or spin anything, but like, why? Like, I mean, not that you can't market yourself. I mean, you should market yourself, but let's go to the core of who you are as a human, because I think there are plenty of people out there who would want to support that.
I'm completely with you. I think there's so much blur out there. It's incredible now. We all hide behind our Instagram filters and our AI words and whatever it is, that I think it's so much more important now to speak, to be heard, seen as real people.
Yes, and you're right, more than ever probably before, and I think that's part of the kind of privilege as a coach is like in reality, the my experience has been the people that looked the most buttoned up, looked like they had it all handled, the perfect pictures, it's the hottest mess under the hood. And as the coach, you get to see behind the scenes, and that proves out to be true. Like when somebody is pretty buttoned up and all perfect, I get nervous because I'm like, ooh, where are we going? What are we going to discover here, right? Not that there can't be stuff, but it's like I think we do all of those things to make up for something. I would much rather see a woman's imperfect belly than a toned ab if it's really her, like all day long, right? And I think that's the opportunity we have now is like, why not make the brands and all the marketing be real and authentic and all that kind of stuff? And yeah, people are jumping on AI because it's going to make it easier to put the fake pitch and spin, not to be real. How is it going to know who I am? But I trust Serena to know who I am. I trust Sarah to get the attention with it,
You can count on me, Barbara B. I'll be here all day and all night for you, girl. So like what's next for you? Tell us like what's don't tell us too much. Give us a little snippet of like what do you think the next chapter looks like? The
Yeah,
next
she's already said itchy feet.
I do. I think there's another book coming. So I'm aware of that. It's like I'm writing a lot. I just don't know exactly what's going to form out of that. But I do think I don't know the concrete answer, but I feel my business transforming in a significant way. And some of it is some productizing, but not in the ways that we've seen and done, in some ways. So what I'm interested in is kind of creating kind of more empowering experiences that people can, use and consume that it's kind of like the example of if I could do all the $1 million and that would give the leg up, like what are the other things that give a leg up that allow us to be outrageous, to be ourselves, to all that kind of stuff. So there's some pictures playing. I don't know what form it's going to take yet, but I think that's going to be in the next year, probably a little bit more of what's emerging out of the business. And my theme for this year is I'm willing to be selfish and audacious because it breaks every upbringing rule of mine. Like one should never be those things. So, the more I stretch into that, I think some other things may pop up too.
One of my favorite words at the moment is audacious, I have to be honest.
It's so good. Yeah. Yeah. You can feel it almost.
Yes, like raw and vulnerable.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the opposite.
Well, I'm never anyone that's been confident. Like people will project confidence on me because I will do things. Like if you said, "Hey, we're going to go have you speak tomorrow in a group of 35,000 people and you can't have an agenda." I'm actually okay. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll get scared and then I'll be there and then we'll get through it. It's all right to me, right?" But that I don't feel confident. I'll be terrified the whole time I'm doing it. That's part of the joy of it, right? So I think to that point, like audacious to me means you act anyway, right? Oh, I don't know the outcome. I don't know that this is sure. In fact, it's probably not sure. In fact, I'm likely to fail, but I'm going to do it anyway. And that's the part that I'm learning to enjoy.
Sounds like keynote speaking is like next.
I have done some of that and I'm probably ready to be back doing a bit of that. So yes, from your lips to the universe's ears. I like that.
Barbara, if anyone is listening and they're as in love with you as I am personally, uh, really, I am. Just send me the coordinates. Don't send me your address. Just send me the coordinates. I'll find the bucket of chalk. Okay. And I'll write, I will be Max.
Amen. I'd be delighted to do that.
Where do we find you? Where do people look you up, follow you, get your burst of just energy? Where do they find that?
Yeah. Beenough.com. is a landing page on my website where they can learn about the book, order the book. And I made these kind of little inspirational reminders that I sent to myself that you can sign up for, that are just a little weekly touch of love, as it were, related to the Enough book. So, and the book's available on Amazon, Barnes and Noble, all that kind of stuff. But once you're there, it links to the rest of the website. So beenough.com.
Beenough.com. How did you manage to get beenough.com?
I know. Well, a little miracle. That's when you trust these things are meant to be. It's so funny because I have tried for barbaraburgess.com, and it's someone in the UK who has it. And, I keep knocking on that door every now and then because they're not using it right now. So, maybe someday it'll be that one too. But
I think Beenough is actually like a very great domain name.
well, good. Then we'll just stick there. From the experts, you heard it here.
Yes. If Serena says it, it will happen. We'll have to do a check-in with you because we are on this journey. It was so lovely hearing your story. And again, for anyone listening, we're going to have Barbara's info on our website as well. So check her out. And Barbara, when book number 2 drops, holler at your girl, will ya?
You betcha. You betcha. And I'm going to have to road trip and, see both of you at some point in time. So I'm adding that to my wish list in the next couple of years here.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for being on the podcast today, Barbara. And we'll be chatting soon.
Take care.